Well, good morning. We're glad you're here this morning. My name is Nick. I'm one of the pastors here at Timber Ridge, and we are honored that you're here today. This is my friend Paul. You may recognize Paul, especially if you pre-COVID attended the 9:30 service. That's the one y'all are at pretty much every week, right, Paul? Paul and his wife Rhonda attend our church. They're a part of the Timber Ridge family. His daughter and son-in-law go here. His grandkids go here. If you know Wes and Leslie Bull, Leslie is Paul and Rhonda's daughter, and we're honored to have Paul with us today. We're concluding our Own Your Mind business series today. And really, when we started thinking about this series and talking about the power of the mind, it all came from a conversation that Paul and I had back in, I don't know when that was, late spring. Somewhere around there, late spring. I was at their house. We were picking up a four-wheeler. I think we have a picture of the four-wheeler that we got that day. I'm not sure if we, go to the refurbished one. That's not the one we got. Go to the one with Hayden on it. There we go. Paul had a four-wheeler, and we went over to check it out. My son has been wanting a four-wheeler, and that's the day we bought that four-wheeler, and he was ecstatic. And so we had this conversation, though, that day about the power of the mind and some things God had taught you. And I wanted to just be able to share that with our church this morning, because it's one of the most significant conversations, spiritual conversations I think I've ever had in my life, Paul. It taught me so much in your backyard, showing me tricks with your dog and showing me some of the things that Jesus had taught you. So why don't you give us a little bit of background on the conversation and kind of how this all came about in your life?
Okay, I'd love to. It's a thrill for me to be here today. Let me just start with this. My parents were divorced when I was young, 11 years old. And I stayed with my dad, and my sisters went with my mom. And I'm telling you this because to let you know that I spent a lot of time alone, a lot of time by myself. Even after my dad remarried, he was working second shift at a boiler plant, and he was gone in the evenings when I was home, and he was home in the mornings when I was at school. So I spent a lot of time by myself, and I never learned to do anything. I didn't have my dad there to help me work on my truck or to build things. I spent a lot of time by myself, and I never learned to do anything. Now, fast forward 20 years, I'm a student pastor. I'm putting on a summer camp in Palacios, Texas, down on the Gulf Coast. And our theme that year was Philippians 4:13, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I taught that verse all week long, and I memorized that verse, and we talked about it, and we chanted it at the rec games and stuff. But something hit me that week. I had to get real with the Lord. I had to say, but Lord, you say I can do anything, but there's a lot of things that I can't do. I can't fly an airplane. I would love to fly an airplane. I can't fly an airplane. I can't perform heart surgery. Pastor Nick, if you and I go to Don Nico's to have lunch and you have a heart attack, I'm sorry, but you're not going to make it.
I'm out of luck, huh?
Yeah, because I can't help you. So I started to get real with the Lord, and I had a time of just me and Him talking this through and working this out. And I'm here today to tell you that you can do anything. You can do all things. And I want to share how that works. I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 6 years ago, Parkinson's disease. It's a disease that takes away your abilities. But I have done more in the last 6 years than I've done in my entire life. And I want to share those with you. It's based around 3 scriptures. The first one I just mentioned, Philippians 4:13. God tells us that we can do all things through Him. Don't think that you can just go out and get in a plane and fly it. I'm not riding with you. But with Him, you can do all things. We serve a mighty God. I hope you know that. We serve the God that raised Lazarus from the dead. He had been dead 4 days in the tomb, and Jesus raised him to life. Our God is the one that fed 5,000 people with the lunch of a little boy. He healed people. He did amazing things, and that's the God that we serve. And if he can do those things for others, he can do those things for us, for you. The second scripture is Proverbs 19:20. Says, "Seek wise counsel." Some versions say, "Seek godly counsel," but it's the same thing. You seek, if you want wise counsel, it's going to come from a godly person. And God has gifted us, all of you in here, all of us as Christians, he's gifted us things that we can do. So when you begin to do things, you seek the guidance of people around you, of other Christians around you that can help you. And lastly, the Bible says you have the mind of Christ. Have you ever thought about that? You have the mind of Christ. You have the ability to think, the ability to problem solve, the ability to work things out. You have an amazing mind that God gave you. So you can do all things through Christ, with the mind of Christ that he gave you, with the guidance of other Christians to help you.
And so you basically started really believing that. It became something that wasn't just Bible verses for you. You started believing it about yourself.
Oh my gosh, yes, sir. It changed my life, and it rules my life now. I don't believe there's anything that I can't do, and I'll explain that to you a little later.
Yeah. So it started. You're diagnosed with Parkinson's, and you're believing this about your life, Paul. You're believing this about yourself. And so you told me you growing up kind of by yourself, you never learned to do anything mechanical. You never learned to build anything, any of that stuff. And so your first project becomes this four-wheeler, right?
Right.
Can we show the four-wheeler, the before picture? This becomes your first project, having no mechanical training, learning, anything,
None whatsoever.
right?
None whatsoever. I barely could check the oil in it, so that four-wheeler was given to me. I knew it was out there. I'd seen it behind a building for ages, and it just sat out there rotting away. And I asked the guy that owned it, I asked him, could I have that four-wheeler? I asked him, could I buy it from him? And he said, well, that four-wheeler's no good. I'll give it to you. And that even better. So I brought the four-wheeler home, and I said to the Lord, you have to understand, I'm learning this as I go. And I said to the Lord, you said I can do all things. You said I can do this. So I'm taking you on your word. And I began to pray, and I looked at some YouTube videos, and I read some things in books. And I had a friend of mine who is not a mechanic. He's actually a retired pipeline welder, but he's sharp. He's a smart guy. And he and I tore that four-wheeler down, and we replaced everything you can replace on it practically. I painted it with lime green Chevrolet paint that you see on the Chevrolet Camaros. And that four-wheeler runs like a top. It
runs like a top. I went to pick up the four-wheeler, and Paul said, hey, by the way, this thing runs a lot faster than a typical Polaris 250 four-wheeler. I'm like, awesome, I'm buying it for my 11-year-old, so this is great. But luckily, you've seen him ride. He's pretty conservative on that thing. Yeah. So it didn't stop there, though. That's kind of where things started, but you just started to challenge yourself to really do things that you had not done before, because you're seeking godly counsel. You believe you can do them. You have the mind of Christ, and so it just continues from there. So share some of the other things that have happened along the way.
Well, I have to tell you, it's exciting when you start to realize what you have within you, what God has gifted you with that you can do. So I just went crazy doing things that I'd never done before. And I wanted a Jeep. And I found out that Jeeps really hold their value, and I couldn't afford one. So I found this Jeep. My son and I spent a day looking at Jeeps, and we found one that I promise you, if they'd have given it to you, you wouldn't have took it home. And I brought it home, and just like the four-wheeler, I told the Lord, I said, Lord, I don't know what I'm doing here. You said I can do all things, so let's do this. and I restored the Jeep. I tore it completely down, took pictures of it as I was taking it apart so I'd know how to put it back together. And I put this Jeep together and I painted it. Painting cars is a lot harder than what you might think. But there's the Jeep after I finished with it, and likewise it run like a top. It was awesome. Had a lot of fun with it.
And didn't stop with the Jeep.
Didn't stop with a Jeep. God created a monster. My daughter, my oldest daughter, has wanted a Corvette all of her life. Yeah, I hear you groaning out there. That's what I said too. There's the Corvette that I found her. We had to tear the complete dash out, all the wiring. We replaced everything you can replace. I painted it 3 times. That guy that was working on it there, that was is a friend of mine. He's an airplane mechanic. He didn't have any history with Corvettes or anything, but he's a pretty sharp guy, and he helped me a lot, and we learned together. I painted that car 3 times, not because I wanted to paint it 3 times, because I kept botching it up. I'd paint it and sand it and paint it and sand it and paint it and sand it. But I think we have a video of the final. There it is. You know, I look at that video and I can't even believe that we did that. But that's who our God is. You know, I think if God loves us so much that he gave his son for us, can he not help us with the little things like this? Do you think he can't do a Corvette or a Jeep?
That's good.
And I'll give you another one. It seems like everything we've talked about is restorations. I've done a lot of things. My wife and I was in the ministry for a lot of years, and we moved a lot, and it seemed like every time we'd move, we'd buy a new house and put it on a 30-year note. And anyway, we got ourselves into a jam, and I thought, you know, if we could build a house and just build it ourselves. I know it's crazy. I thought if we could build a house and build it ourselves, we wouldn't have a house payment. We could do a lot of things. So I said, Lord, I want to build a house. You said I can do all things. You said I can do this, and I believe I can do this. So we started building a house.
This is post-Parkinson's diagnosis.
I'd already been diagnosed with Parkinson's. That first picture we had a moment ago was my kids, my grown kids and my grandkids. We framed that house in one day, and not one of those kids are a carpenter. We learned it as we went. I built that house in 7 months. The same guy, the pipeline welder, he helped me, and we built that house 7 months. My wife and I live in it now, and we don't have a house payment. That's who our God is.
I've been out to their house. It is unreal. It is a beautiful home. And he just casually mentioned, he's like, yeah, when I built the house. And I was like, what? When you built the house? Like, it was just something people do every day, is build houses. But, I mean, it was kind of your everyday life at that point, right? Just building the house.
Yeah.
It didn't stop with building things either.
No.
I mean, you've got a lot of tricks up your sleeve.
Yeah. It's gotten kind of funny. I talk to the Lord all the time, telling him things I want to do. And I was at a roping in Guthrie, Oklahoma, at the Lazy E Arena. And a friend of mine, his name is Bryce Chapman, he has a border collie dog that is just amazing, does all kinds of cool stuff. And between rounds, we were sitting out there at the trailer and watching his dog do tricks. And I said, well, Lord, I want to have a dog that does tricks. I want to train my dog.
I think we've got a few different videos. Here's the barrel racer.
Go.
volleyball player, same dog, multifaceted.
That's my daughter-in-law. She played university volleyball, and she coaches high school volleyball now. And I really think my dog can beat her. Now, this is Camo when he was 4 months old. Let's go, come on. Jumping through a hoop.
And he does, if you guys have seen America's Got Talent and the dog acts where you have somebody walking and the dog zigzags through your legs and comes back and jumps through your arm and goes sit on that rock. You've trained him to do all that stuff. I mean, it was like watching an America's Got Talent act when we were out at your house, watching all those different things that you've done with Camo. And so you said something the other day to me. You said you feel like in some ways you have too much confidence now.
Yeah.
Explain what that.
I never had any confidence that I could do anything, so I wouldn't try to do things. If my pickup was broke down, I would just take it to somebody to fix it and pay them. I didn't have any confidence that I could do it. But Hebrews 11:1 says that faith is confidence. It's confidence in hope of the unseen. We have an unseen God that walks with us and talks with us and guides us. And having faith in Him gives you confidence. And I actually took it a little overboard. I got too confident. I started taking on anything and maybe not thinking things through. I didn't use the mind that Christ gave me. My daughter, my oldest daughter, wanted to install some French doors in her house, and they were going to charge her $400 to put these French doors in. And I said, well, don't pay somebody $400 to put French doors in your house. I can do that. I can do all things. And I can do that in about 2 hours. It took 3 days. But her house has French doors in it.
So that's over and over again been the lesson of your life where you've seen
over and over again
God, and you have every excuse to say, God, I can't do that.
I've said that my whole life, and I hope that you're not in that place, that you're saying that you don't have any confidence that you can't do things, because you serve a mighty God that can do all things, and He said that He'll guide you. He'll teach you to do all things.
That's good. As we were having this conversation back a few months ago, and then in the office earlier this week, and preparing for today, I think the two lies that we typically believe, I think if the enemy can get us to believe two lies, he's won in our life. The first one is this: I'm all alone. I'm all alone. And the second one is this: well, I just can't. Whatever it is, I just can't build something. I'm just not good with my hands. I just can't be good with money. I just can't have a healthy family. I just can't have a good marriage. The devil wants to convince us that we're all alone and that we can't do whatever it is that God has called us to do. And so I want to challenge you with two questions this morning. And I'm going to, Paul, give you a chance to just challenge those, specifically those who are younger in our crowd. Two questions. The first one is this: where do you need to ask for help of godly people in your life? Where do you need to ask for help of godly people? You've given up on something because you didn't want to ask for help. I love how you said, well, I've got a friend who, and it was never a friend who was like, I've got a friend who's a car mechanic. You just got a friend who's sharp and who knows a little bit more about something than you did. I've got a friend who knows a little bit more about building something than I do, so I'm going to get him to help me out. That's kind of been your MO, to go, I'm going to get godly, wise people to help me do things that I can't do myself.
That's what God tells us to do. We need to all stick together.
That's good. I think we have a verse out of Proverbs 13:20. Whoever walks with the wise becomes wise. So where have you just not asked the help of godly people that would benefit your life? The second question is this: where do you need to start having the confidence of Christ? You've given up believing in a dream God's called you to, in a vision He placed in your heart, in a challenge He put before you. And you've started believing the lie, well, I just can't, or it's too hard, or I'm not good enough to do that. Where do you need to start having the confidence of Christ in your life? Isaiah 41:10 says, "Don't be afraid, for I'm with you. Don't be discouraged, for I'm your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will hold you up with my victorious right hand." You know, I believe we have an epidemic in the Christian faith, Paul, and it's that the devil has convinced us that we can't when we have a God who says we can. And your story, that's your story. You could easily say, I can't do that. You could have every excuse to go, I'm not going to be able to do those things. But you've chosen instead to believe what God says about you, to believe what His Word says. And so would you close just kind of giving us a challenge, especially to those folks, I mean, we're a young church, and we talked about this week, who are younger. You said it took you a while to learn this lesson. So would you challenge our younger folks this morning?
Yeah, I waited until I was 58 years old to take God at His word. And I waited until after I had Parkinson's. It was supposed to be taking away my abilities. And I don't want you to wait that long. I want you to take God at His word and say to Him, Father, you said that I can do this, so I'm going to take a shot at it. I promise you, you can do way more than you think you can do. And you're way more creative than you ever dreamed you could be. Because that's who our God is that walks with us.
Paul, thank you so much for being here today. What an honor to have you share this on our stage. Would you join me in thanking Paul for sharing with us today? Let's pray together this morning. God, we thank you for the opportunity that we have, God, to read your word. So help us not just read it, but to believe it. To believe that what you say is true. What you say about us is true. That we can do anything that comes our way because of the strength we find in you, Jesus. That you've given us your mind so that we can do hard things. That you've put people around us so that we're not alone. And so help us not to walk in the lies of the enemy, believing that we're alone and we can't, but to walk in the truth of your word, believing that we can, and that you've surrounded us with people who can help us along the way. God, I thank you for Paul and the wisdom you've taught him and his willingness to share and to pass that on to us, Jesus. We thank you so much for that. And we ask all these things in your life-giving, life-changing name. If you're joining us online today, we just want to say thank you for being with us today. We're honored that you would join us online, and we hope this message blesses you today.